To tell this story, we must travel in time. Back to the land of the O-Gah-Pah, back to Arkansas. Long ago, before railroads, reservations, or even the name America, there was a people who lived on the confluences of the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. They were called the O-Gah-Pah, the downstream people. We know them today as the QUAPAW Nation. When the QUAPAW settled into what is now known as Arkansas, sometime before the 16th century, they built villages near the rivers. They planted corn, beans, squash. They fished, they hunted, and they thrived. While it is debated when the first interaction between the QUAPAW and Europeans took place, it is confirmed through historical record that Father Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet came across the QUAPAW in 1673. Marquette and Joliet called the QUAPAW by a different name, the Arkansas or Akansea, gifted to them by the Illini people who described them as fierce warriors. A second exploration group, led by René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle, would meet the QUAPAW just a few short years later. La Salle and the QUAPAW people had a significant, though complex, relationship during the late 17th and early 18th centuries. La Salle would claim the Mississippi River and surrounding territory for France, naming it Louisiana in 1682. La Salle and his trusted lieutenant, Henry de Tonty, established a foothold in the region, a trading post known as Arkansas Post. It was here, along the winding riverbanks, that the QUAPAW Nation and European newcomers would first engage in meaningful exchange. Goods, ideas, and diplomacy passing from hand to hand. But this contact came at a cost. With it arrived something unseen, the first devastating wave of smallpox, a silent storm that swept through villages, forever altering the lives of a people rooted in this land for generations. In 1776, the Revolutionary War took place, and believe it or not, the QUAPAW had a part to play. At the time, the QUAPAW were closely aligned with Spanish colonial forces, particularly those under Governor Bernardo de Galvez, who controlled Spanish Louisiana and supported the American fight against the British. The QUAPAW provided military and logistical support to the Spanish. They served as scouts, warriors, and informants, helping the Spanish maintain control over the Mississippi River region and defend Fort San Carlos near the Arkansas Post against potential British or British allied native attacks. The QUAPAW's actions were not only in support of their allies, but in defense of their own interests. The British were arming tribes hostile to the QUAPAW. Supporting the Spanish protected QUAPAW trade, territory, and political relationships. They played a quiet but meaningful role in shaping the power balance in the Mississippi Valley during a critical moment in North American history. With the birth of a new nation came a hunger for land, and the ink of treaties would become the tool. In 1818, the first treaty between the QUAPAW and the new United States government would be signed. The QUAPAW were compelled to cede over 30 million acres, nearly all of their homeland between the Arkansas and Mississippi rivers. In exchange, they were granted a narrow strip of land along the lower Arkansas River, a fraction of what had been theirs. It wasn't just land they were giving up, it was access to sacred places and the ability to protect themselves from encroaching settlers. Only 6 years later, in 1824, another treaty followed. This time, the QUAPAW lost nearly everything. Even the meager land they had retained was taken. The United States promised to relocate them to Caddo lands in Louisiana. But what followed was not protection, it was disaster. The QUAPAW were sent to unfamiliar territory, plagued by flooding, disease, and hunger. Hundreds, possibly even thousands, died.
We've prospered.
Prosperous is the word Barbara Kaiser uses to describe how far the QUAPAW Nation has come since the Treaty of 1824 was signed.
It marks the real beginning of the dispossession of the QUAPAW people from their traditional lands.
The treaty between the U.S. and QUAPAW resulted in the tribe being removed from Arkansas.
The survivors wandered, most returning north in defiance. For nearly a decade, the QUAPAW existed in a state of uncertainty, displaced, scattered, and grieving. Then, in 1833, the U.S. government allowed the QUAPAW to resettle along the Neosho River in what is now northeast Oklahoma. This land, too, came with strings, though all agreements at that time certainly did. In 1893, under the pressures of allotment and assimilation, the QUAPAW would become the first tribe to self-allot their own lands into individual plots as the federal government moved to dissolve tribal governments and open so-called surplus lands to settlers. Despite all their hardships, the QUAPAW have endured. They survived the paper wars. They outlasted broken promises. They suffered through the boarding schools, and then they rebuilt. Today, the QUAPAW Nation continues to stand as a sovereign people, economically diverse and growing. Politically and socially active, and deeply rooted in the stories of their ancestors. The treaties may have taken the land. Through the boarding schools, a loss of tradition and culture, but the spirit and pride of the O-Gah-Pah remains.